All right. Okay, maybe we can get started. Others will join as they can, but welcome everyone to the December Essentiel meetup. Really excited to have everyone join us tonight, just a couple short weeks away from Christmas. So I know everyone's time is really precious, but we're really excited to have Lianne Jeffs join us tonight as our guest. And some of you, if you're able to participate in the Think conference, will recognize Lianne as she was one of our panel members and introduced the topic of currency in care, and sparked quite a great conversation. So we thought it would be nice to open that up to a broader audience. Lianne is also one of our newest board members on Essentiel. So we're really happy and excited to have her in that role as well. And I'll turn it over to you, Lianne, to sort of do your introduction and then get started.
Great. Thank you. Thanks you so much, Mary Lou, Nico and Essentiel for sharing with you in the next while at a very busy time, as Mary Lou had mentioned, how we're leveraging our currency of care and advancing what we're framing as the science of care at Sinai Health. I'm Lianne, just as Mary Lou had alluded to as well. I have three roles actually at Sinai Health now. The most recent is the newly appointed scientific director of a new institute for the science of care and innovation, which I'll share a bit later around in the actual presentation too. For those of you who don't know, I'll tell you a little bit more about Sinai Health in a bit, but we're located in downtown Toronto, Ontario. Next slide, Nico, please. Before I start and get into it, though, I do want to begin by acknowledging that the land that I'm on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat nations, and is covered by Treaty 13. I also want to acknowledge those of the Black diaspora who were moved from their land and communities and brought to this country involuntarily and subjected to oppressive structures and systems causing centuries of trauma, which have deeply impacted Black people and communities in Canada today. So thank you. Next slide. And as Mary Lou had mentioned, it was at a recent Think in November when I was listening to the presenters over the 2 days and really starting to sort of crystallize this concept that I'm referring to of currency as a currency of care, and really what is our value proposition as nurses, as innovators, scientists, entrepreneurs, and was really thinking it's really around care and how we need to reframe our currency of care and the currency of nursing now more than ever. So as part of my sleuthing as a scientist, I can't help but, look to see what's been shared before around currency of care. It's not a lot out there, actually, which was a bit surprising, but wanted to share this quote, not specific to healthcare, but it really resonated with me, particularly over the last few years. And, I was drawn to Essentiel back very early days in the pandemic, because as we've talked about in many of our meetups, as well at the conference, is the way in which it's a different way of connecting with each other, this Essentiel network group of individuals too. And so I just thought it was really interesting, this one too, because although we know that care is vital and connection, it's what held us up together, I think, in a very, very, obviously uncertain, and we continue to face uncertainty as well. I will argue later on, or posit later on, now more than ever is perfect timing for people to get investment in care and investment in nursing. And I'll share with you again sort of some stories around how we did that, and happy to take some questions as we go along. So basically, if we go to the next slide, one of the first articles that came out, I'm sad to say this was written in 2003, but I thought it was really interesting. So it was in the Nursing Administrative Quarterly almost like 20 years ago. But think about these questions. So what if the straight path forward is a laser focus on the core of our business, which is patient care? What if caring were the currency with which we build the reputation of wealth and prestige, admired by the public and professional community for the value that we bring? What would it take to elevate caring to a position of prominence within organizations' missions, vision, values, culture, leadership, and clinical practice? And I'll speak most to that in our case study with Sinai Health. What if we valued caring competencies as relevant as clinical, technical, and critical thinking skills? And what if caring could unleash the potential to favorably improve the economic position of each of our healthcare facilities? And then some interesting questions, and we'll sort of come back to that as we go through. I wanted to, if we go to the next slide, and Nico, I don't know if you're going to put it in chat. We're going to see how this works. But I'm curious, when I talk about the currency of care, what kind of words come to mind? How would you describe the currency of care and the currency of nursing? So if people can either try to do the Mentimeter or actually just type into the chat what comes to mind. Compassion. I know you didn't think at 7 p.m. at night we would put you to a test, did you? Money, urgent timing, and oh great, and then budget. Value. Based on care results and optimal outcomes, support, knowledge. So a wide array. I'm not sure. We'll wait maybe a few more minutes, decision making, if there's any more words, and we'll see if we're able to convert it to a word cloud. But if not, we'll be capturing this narrative as well. Challenging to measure, yeah. Okay, Nico, I don't know if it's going to convert into a word cloud or
no, it did not convert into a word cloud.
Okay. No problem. We can see revenue. So a lot of it is currency is around worth, value, decision making, and I like the value based in care results and optimal outcomes. We'll try this another time. There'll be plenty of time in the future to actually sort of have this sort of discussion as well. So I did also pose this on Twitter a couple of weeks ago to sort of get people interested in the concept, but also hopefully draw some people into tonight's discussion as well too. So if we go to the next slide, here's what a few and some of you might have been actually people who actually shared what you thought, but here's some four key ones that really resonate. So care is crucial and paramount to everything we do in healthcare, refers to the value we place on care, but also the relevance in today's technologized and challenging settings. And very similar to what many of you shared as well too. It basically denotes value, finite supply, or rather supply that needs to be replenished, not limitless. It's not valued as much on care that needs to, and that trust, respect, and connections are currencies of care for me. And so again, just trying to think about how we can do it. And then thanks, Susan, you just added intrinsic value versus dollar value is a challenge. Absolutely. So again, I'll sort of share with you what we've been doing at Sinai Health to lay the foundation. And I will say it is a foundation, and it's a strong foundation, and it's a movement towards obviously where we view the currency of care that needs to be. So a bit about Sinai Health before I get into sort of more, and then very happy to open it up to discussion as well. So the next slide. So Sinai Health, as I had mentioned, is located in downtown Toronto. There's actually 4 key areas of Sinai Health. We have our Sinai Health, Mount Sinai Hospital, which is the acute care site, and that has roughly around 474 beds. And our Hennick Bridgebutt Hospital, which is our complex continuing care rehab, which is another 464 beds. We have Circle of Care that provides some form of home and community service, but not full. And then our scientific institute is Lunenfeld Tannenbaum, which really houses our discovery and basic sciences. And I'll talk a bit more about it too, but the value that we were able to create at Sinai Health was to create another institute that is parallel to our basic and discovery science. And what I mean by basic and discovery science is, for those who aren't in this world, it's more around, you know, basically things. Basic is more around like cells, molecular, genomics, and discovery again can have some trials, but it's not necessarily around people per se. I'll maybe be trying things out. Whereas our new institute, which I'll share more, is really around people. It's around care and a focus on generating new knowledge and discoveries related to care and our conceptualization of care as well too. We are also a fully affiliated University of Toronto Academic Health Science Center as well too. So lots of scholarly activity between education, teaching, learning, and discovering through research as well too. Next slide. Our clinical programs cross obviously because we do cross the continuum of care, but Sinai Health, and I think I see Sue here as well, who Sue Bookie Bassett, who work there, and there may be some others as well. We are known for our women's and infants program. We have a fetal therapy and neonatal bar none in Canada, and is quite well known for high risk pregnancy and all the sort of services that wrap around that as well too. Our surgical and oncology is a very lively program as well, and also our urgent and critical care, which offers critical care services, emergency services. And then over at Hennick Bridgepoint, as I mentioned, it's our rehab complex care. We've got stroke unit, we've got palliative care. So we really do have the gamut of care that crosses the healthcare system as well too. So next slide, please. We are also Canada's only magnet hospital right now. I know that, I think I heard that Jewish in Montreal is interested in the pathway to discovery. So Magnet has just recently created has created a pathway to attain Magnet too. But so what that means is obviously we are very committed to the sort of the call. Nellie Amaral, she's able to make it. She was hoping to, she always calls it the big three, where we have to excel in quality clinical indicators, patient experience, and nurse satisfaction. And of course, a key focus of that, particularly as you go through the redesignation stages, is having nurses lead research and innovation in our organization. And there's reference, and the slide deck will be made available as well too, but I've referenced our articles that we published around this as well, for if you want to have find out more information around it too. But I'll start off and recall one of the questions. Next slide, please. One of the questions in the 2003 is, so what would it take to elevate caring to a position of prominence within a mission, vision, values, culture, leader? Well, we actually have care everywhere in our mission, our vision, and you'll see, not yet the next slide, but I'll just say, so care is right there. We discover and deliver life-changing care. Our mission is we deliver excellent and compassionate care in hospital, community, and home, focus on the comprehensive needs of people. We push boundaries for health solutions and innovative models that connect care across the continuum and the lifespan, and discover and translate scientific breakthroughs and educate future clinical and scientific leaders. And that really flows from our tripartite mission of being an academic health science center, where we do need to integrate practice, research, and education. Next slide. But probably what's even more important as you start to then cascade into how you're going to focus your efforts in your organization is your strategic priorities that flow from your mission and vision. And so, as you can see, we have 4 key pillars or strategic directions in our strategic plan that we released a few years ago, and just recently have extended it to 2028 because of COVID, and a lot of the signature initiatives, as we call them, had to be put on pause or reshift and that too. But what I really want to point out for you too, care is in every aspect. And so we do have the financial area around optimizing care and performance. We do have our people, building on a caring and inclusive culture environment, and obviously our focus on excellence and integration in care and service. The key pillar that I'm responsible for within the institute role that I have, but also research and innovation lead for Sinai Health System, is advancing our science of care, education and discovery. And we really had a huge commitment to move on this and really try to strengthen the synergy between what we're referring to as science, knowledge, teaching, and clinical practice. But we've specifically called out the importance of not only investing, as I referred to earlier, in basic medical and discovery research, but into our science of care. Prior to just going into the science of care, though, the next 2 slides talk about our academic practice strategy, because this work actually, the work that we did in the next slide in our academic practice strategy that we, I think, unveiled probably in 2019. So Nico, if you go to the next slide, please. And just sort of briefly, we actually had an academic practice strategy. That's the first place we coined the term science of care. And so in the research and innovation dimension of our work, we actually refer to it like 4 years ago. One of the things I learned early on in my career when I was working at the ministry, after working at our professional association for 4 years, working in policy, is how important it is to get words in the things like the throne speech, and the throne speech in Ontario sets the stage for the budget and what's going to be. And the nurse practitioner was on my file back in that day. And I remember really lobbying with Kathleen McMillan, who was the provincial our first provincial chief nursing officer at the time, to really get wording in around nurse practitioner. So similar sort of process years later in the context more at a meso level organization is to get the words out there and define it and make those words come real and become current and currency incredible within the organization as well too. So again, we were able to influence the next iteration, which I already referred to, on how care cascaded everything, because it really is the very business that we're in, providing care across the continuum as well. And then the next slide shows our professional practice model. And again, this work was done parallel to the practice strategy to really start to crystallize what it is and how we're going to move forward on creating more of a professional practice model at the integrated sites, which I forgot to mention, integrated in 2015. So we're now year 7 into the integration, which was voluntary. There was a lot of back office consolidation in that amalgamation, but the clinical services did not integrate because the two sites are very distinct in the types of clinical services and level of service they create. But again, this slide, again, there's more articles in this, but what I really wanted to sort of focus in on this one too is what we refer to as fundamentals of care. And Jane Merkley, who is the chief nurse executive, and I have been involved in work with the International Learning Collaborative for over a decade that really is focusing on meeting integrated care needs, including that physical, psychosocial, and relational aspects of patients and care partners. So this also focuses along the discovery of new knowledge, as you can see, that enables really what we're trying to create is these high-performing teams to achieve excellent outcomes in clinical care across all the different areas that I referred to earlier. And as we view this is all part of our currency and our value proposition. And so now I'll get into the scientific work that I've been leading with many at Sinai Health. The next slide. And again, we designed this as well too. And there's 2 articles that are referred to. One was with Mary Lou, which was a few years ago, which had a small, it just had the inner circle version of this particular framework, which was the caring, symptom, safety with fundamental care with team and implementation science. As we started to build, we actually realized that there was also improvement science, and then more recently innovation science, which to this particular group, I think hopefully resonates too, because that is around design thinking and how you actually co-design and use design principles to actually bring your idea through a cycle where you go through what is you want to do, what's your problem, what's your pebbles in your feet that I've heard some of our colleagues, I don't know, one of Lianne Ginty was hoping to join tonight too. You know, how can you actually address that too? But really what's core again is the fundamental care, which I referred to as well. And these different fields of science, because each one of there's like 7 fields that really are in this particular framework wrapped around the person-centered learning health system, which is more around how do we use data to make sure that we're driving what we do at all levels? How do we continue to learn, take risks, innovate? And not every time you innovate, it's going to have the intended outcome as you wished, but there are learnings. You have psychological safety to learn from where you haven't been able to necessarily get the outcome that you were intending as well too, and it's how you build. So part of that too is this institute. So the next slide, and I'll provide some examples specifically of nurse-led innovation and research that really bring the framework to light. So our Institute for the Science of Care and Innovation was just recently announced, and as it was mentioned, I was appointed in the summer, and we're really starting to move a bit forward now on what it will look like. But the aim of it is to really serve as a hub for nurses, health disciplines, physician staff, and researchers for their ideas, and really looking at, is your idea something that would go down a pathway of innovation? Is it something that would be using implementation science? Would it be something that you actually want to use any sort of quality improvement tools for? And is it anything to do with team? And a combination of all the above. They're not meant to be mutually exclusive. It depends on what you really wanted to do. So again, it's really trying to result in creating this currency and knowledge that we're looking at how do we actually evaluate the care that we're providing and testing out new ways of providing care. So a core stream I'm really thrilled to announce that this is just around this time last year, $10 million was secured, or pledged is probably a better way to describe it. That was led by one of our board members, Maxine Gronowski, and with several other female philanthropists, created this $10 million endowed investment. And happy to talk more about details around that too. But we really do view not the Center for Nursing Excellence as a key mechanism and catalyst for our new knowledge and discovery requirements for Magnet, but also to really sort of catapult nursing and to hopefully give them joy and meaning in work and reconnect to scholarship in practice, amid this relentless pandemic and human health resource challenges as well too. So we really do view the Institute and the Center as a game changer and catalyst in our efforts to retain and attract nurses to be able to have not only practice to full scope, but to help generate what that scope might look like, or what models of care should look like as well. We know in terms of getting the theme of currency, there's lots of research to support when nurses are engaged in meaningful work, scholarship, research, innovation, that there are great outcomes for nurses, there's great outcomes for patients and care partners. And as I mentioned before, now more than ever, we really need to focus our efforts on recovering and building back resilience through how we care for our patients and care partners, but also how we care for each other as well too. And so a lot of work went in behind the scenes to be sort of really unpack it. It was being at the right place with the right leadership, with the right ears, with the right message, being able to have direct access to our foundation individuals and having some story and narrative, because we don't have a lot of the impact data yet, because we're still somewhat early days in building the research and innovation aspect to nursing. We have strong nursing practice, strong nursing education, but we have stories. And that's what I used when I went to the board 3 years ago with Jane Merkley, when we went to the board foundation 2 years ago, and when I went to the board last week at this, a little bit later, or sorry, last Thursday, we went to the board again for an update around the Institute. And I used narrative and I used stories, and some of them I'll share with you in a few minutes around, actually, I'll be sharing them now. That's my next slide. So that's all nice. This is great, but what's happening at Sinai Health? And I want to share with you, all what I'm sharing with you has happened since COVID. So our nurses stepped up. They did put in applications for the variety of funding sources that were available. And it reminds me of some of obviously the work that he has done at Mass General as well too. Nurses stepped up. They found ways to actually get proposals in, work on it. Not all projects obviously were able to go forward. Some were COVID specific. We have, I'd say about 50% of the funded projects in the last 2 years have sort of come almost to fruition and are getting pretty close to. But I'll tell you, so what are we doing? Well, we advanced our safety science. So nurses are decreasing skin breakdown by implementing new innovative wound healing practices. And our nurse practitioner had an idea, a clinical hunch around the use of amniotic fluid to actually apply to really complex wounds. And although we don't have a lot, there's probably about 4 or 5, because this is just launched in the last, I'd say 6 months. It's incredible how the impact that this is having on the wound healing and quality of life too. Again, amniotic fluid, and now they're looking to actually look at how they can use the amnion to actually other modalities as well too. But again, that was a nurse practitioner who came up with that idea as well. We also have another nurse educator in our diabetes program that, like many of what I've heard in the last few years, had to pivot, obviously offering education to gestational diabetes with pregnant women, had to pivot virtually. And how do you sort of maintain that sort of therapeutic relationship virtually when they used to come in? Quite frankly, a lot of the women prefer the virtual, because getting downtown Toronto is not easy in terms of the traffic. And so, this option is actually very person-centered as well too. We're advancing symptom science by, and under our researcher is Sarah Beth Silver, who's one of our clinical nurse specialists. She's really moving ground on oral health practices. And so we know obviously that oral health is not only is it a conduit if it's poor to infection, also dignity, quality of life, thirst. And so she's leading work with Craig Dale, who is up at Sunnybrook, and others around oral health with dentistry and other health disciplines as well, to really improve our oral health. Something that I need to, we have another team over at Hennick that is led by a nurse, and so with social work, on how to promote sleep using music. Or basically, I'm like, I don't know, everyone could probably use a good sleep these days. Again, all these ideas came from areas where we knew we could improve, and people had ideas too. In terms of caring, we have one of our nurse practitioners who noticed that staff were really having challenges related to how to provide bereavement care and support themselves in order to. And so she created a whole bereavement resource for the families of neonatal babes that were either palliative or had just passed away as well too. And again, really concrete examples of how we're actually doing moving forward. One of the more sort of interesting ones too is a nurse and diet technician are working to create an app within our hospital. We have a lot, which is probably similar to many organizations. We have a food court that has all these foods. Our food's still not the greatest. Like, I don't think we score as high as we need to on our food services, but really what they're looking to do is create some sort of app that could be put onto a device that then patients could actually, with their family members, figure out food. It was put on pause because of COVID and some of the restrictions as well too, but that is work again that was coming through. And then another example too is a pharmacist and nurse who co-designed a new lockbox medication storage in our labor and delivery to store opioids because there was some issues related to opiate diversion as well too. And so that was more of a product development, more the ones I shared before around more models of care or how we improve care, but we are doing work around that too. And then during nursing week, and I'll just sort of go over too, because I want to leave time for obviously conversation too, but just a couple more examples on the next slide, Nico. So National Bank has provided funding for our nurses. And so we created a research and innovation award. And so we have a clinical nurse specialist who is looking to create more, bring a pathway of perinatal mental health into practice, because what she was observing during COVID was there's a 15% increase of women who were experiencing mental health issues who are pregnant that require care. Another group in our NICU is looking at how to actually, implement a bundle, more sort of quality improvement, but still there's some innovation on, basically looking at how we can actually improve skin integrity of the very, very small neonates as well. The next slide goes over an emerge team that is looking at how they could create some sort of communication tool so that patients actually know what's going on. So they don't necessarily have to keep going to the triage nurse, and they can follow and track, time to lab, time to assessment and that too. And so they're looking to develop that. And then another team, which is actually really interesting, is this is a registered practical nurse. And I think we've heard a couple, and I think at one of the pitches, there was something very similar where there's countless time right now being spent on trying to find nurses to schedule to. So again, if anyone knows any connections for any of these nurses to connect in with too, I'd be happy to connect you with them as well too, because you may already be involved along the way. And then just sort of finally, in terms of how are we trying to keep our resilience up with our nurses. So the next slide. So we also launched this Care Art initiative with part of our funding, and it's a multimodal arts initiative for nurses, where we started off with, and I'll go to the next slide, started off with a creation of giving them kits, and it's called The Future's in Our Hands. Nurses are being given a kit and being asked to visually draw what care means to them, but a hand has to be in it. So if you go to the next slide, you can see a couple of what people have drawn in that too. We're going to have an exhibit when we can, and we'll do it virtual and also an in-person expo of this to have it as in a gallery. The second one that we're doing too, which is the next slide, is storytelling. And some of you might have already participated in something like this, but we're actually having our nurses to go through a workshop where they create a storyboard, a 3-minute video that would then be entered into a film festival and have an award too. So that's something that we're launching in the new year as well, to really try to reconnect nurses to the very amazing work that we do and to showcase it as well. And quite frankly, there's science behind art, and there's art therapy. And so we also thought it would be a really good reason to sort of reconnect. And quite frankly, it's great. We've gone around, and nurses are finding time. It's challenging, but they are finding time, and they also can bring the kids home and work on it in their own time too, if they don't have time. The next slide just shows an initiative that was led by one of our nurses in labor and delivery, where as part of our funding right now through the center, she's created a mentorship program, not on clinical acumen, but more on just, supporting each other, critical thinking, and has gotten already some great, I think there's probably about 12 or 13 teams already, that there's a mentee and a mentor. And some of the comments that the mentors have made is, it helps reflect on your practice. It's really nice being part of tackling retention and staffing. It validates the knowledge and how I have something to share with someone else. For the mentees, they talk about it's been great in terms of confidence. When they feel uncomfortable, they feel safe to connect, and the mentor reassures them. And at the start of the program, didn't really see the benefits, but now they do. Probably similar to many of your organizations that are in healthcare, we've had an influx of new nurses. And so there's a lot of novice nurses. And so the gap that was identified was almost the social connection, because we pretty much removed that, and it still hasn't returned anywhere to normal, where nurses can get together where they used to. And so this is a virtual weekly check-in over a 12-week period. So again, that's sort of where that, and then the sort of next slide really provides with entrepreneurship. So again, really busy slide, but what I want to show you is all the moving parts we have and how we're leveraging our currency of care through the investments that we've made, which I've shared. Our currency of care and our value proposition we're focusing in on, I refer to as our care assets, which is our people, our ideas, care equity, which is the work undertaken, and care acumen and how we build competency and capabilities. So again, we have several initiatives that we're building on. And again, we'll continue to build on. We're looking to do a hackathon in the future when we're able to. There's a whole bunch of, and leveraging Sanciel and the expertise with Sanciel to start speaker series and really sort of build on the donations that we have. They are making a difference. They are, in terms of improving, as I said, some of the outcomes like pain, decreasing infection, improving quality of life, are just a few examples. And just sort of in closing comments in the next slide, I just want to say, as we recover from this relentless pandemic and HHR challenges, investing in us and nurses is paramount, and innovations and new discovery. We know innovations and they have to come from the people who are deeply living the problems and are need and opportunities to recover and find, again, joy. If you can't see it, there's joy and meaning in our daily practice. So as we continue our pathway forward, we're doubling down our efforts to really encourage our nurses at Sinai Health to be curious, creative, compassionate, collective, and connected. And I encourage everyone here as well to continue to ask yourself what might be, what should be, what if, and how might we. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a snapshot of what we've been doing. And like I say, I have stories to share because our nurses stepped up and basically are still coming forward. We just launched our second round of the ideas competition and our first research competition. So I'm curious to see what we will get in the new year, but it just gives you a bit of a snapshot in terms of how we've sort of been trying to drive the care and currency of care forward, and nursing is an integral player within that space.
Wow, thank you, Lianne. That was a lot of information in a short period of time, and super exciting work. I love the innovative solutions that nurses are coming up with, but also the creative approach that Sinai is taking to engage nurses. One of the things we heard at the conference was, we should try to move away from the words retention and recruitment to, attract and engage. And I think you shared some really great examples of that. So at this point, we'll open it up to questions for Lianne. Might be easiest if you put your hand up, if everyone knows how to use the put your hand up on Zoom. I think if you go to the three dots.
And while we're waiting a minute, thank you, sir. I couldn't remember the phrasing. I was racking my brain to what the wording was. So it's attract, and engaged. I know. Thank you, because I was trying to remember what it was, how it was said. I'm like, that's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you were saying them sometimes.
I did use the R words though every once in a while.
That's okay. Okay, we got a question from Susan. Maybe you just want to, when you before you ask your question, maybe introduce yourself and where you're from. That would be great.
Hi, Lianne. Thank you so much. This is very exciting. I'm Susan Conatee-Buck. I'm a faculty member at the University of Delaware. I teach nurse practitioner students predominantly. I teach DNP students and also teach healthcare informatics and technology to our nurses as well as our MBA students, because we're trying to get them all to start playing well in the sandbox together to start off with. This is phenomenal. It's what we all aspire to do. My question to you had to do with your center's focus specifically on the value of nursing. And I'm wondering how you are parsing out the unique value of nursing versus making this part of the whole medical. We're looking at value, and that's hard, because when you are looking at trying to establish the value, nursing's contribution gets lost when we look at bundling up nursing and medicine and everything together, and then have to look at outcomes. So interested to hear how you're tackling that, because it's really challenging on our end.
Yeah. So Susan, thank you for that insight and the question too. And I would say it's been a stealth operation. And so I've had to, I have cashed in all the dividends of my life. Every road led me to being appointed a nurse to a brand new research and innovation that's focused on care. And so that's important. I'm not bragging, it's not, but that's really important. It is getting the credibility. So what I didn't mention is the Center for Nursing Excellence is one of the centers. Right now we have three centers that we're envisioning. One is an innovation center, as well as we have a sort of placeholder integrated care collaborative practice. Just a few weeks ago, another research entity is now part of the institute that I will have oversight on. How I'm structured within the organization is important. So I'm not reporting to the vice. Well, we're about to hire a VP. I'm at the same sort of like the institute is at the same level as our basic, and our CEO talks like that. So he's a talking head related to how important the care is and the credibility too. And, it hasn't been easy. And when I went to the board, I remember our CEO the first time around, and even recently, it's, you can't be your academic self, because it's not something that necessarily, they're not going to want morbidity, mortality. It's like, yeah, that's to us. Like we talk that language to each other, but it's really is, how do you actually make the credibility through the stories? So I really personalized it. I basically said, it's about, how is your son anxious? Are you afraid about your son? Are you worried about your mother's, pain? Are you and just really anchoring in fundamental care and stories that hit your audience. And so I use different language, different stories, different ways to tell a story, depending on who I'm pitching to or who other people are pitching to. And now what I'm trying to do is build a team where it cascades, where, again, deference to expertise. I would have loved to, I just didn't have time. I would have loved to have like one of the nurses co-present with me, right? Like they should be telling their story, not me. So I think it is a stealth, and I'm happy to share if people ever want to see some of my speaking notes for the board or any of the background, I'm happy to share. If you wanted to connect with me, you can either, I'm terrible at LinkedIn. You probably, if anyone who's looked at my LinkedIn thing, I will be better at it. But in the meantime, you might just want to email me. Did that sort of get at what you're hoping to hear, Susan, or?
Yeah, it is. And I think fundamentally the problem is we keep trying to put a dollar value on something that really doesn't have a dollar value, should not have a dollar value attached to it. When you talk about the personal stories, and you talk about how something is important to each individual, and that shapes its value, that the hard part is trying to talk to the bean counters who want to say, show me why show me the value.
Yeah. And, just to that point too, you made a really good point that I hadn't referenced yet, because there's sort of three ways, because we think of the cost of nursing as, as a widget, as where actually what we do is we factor into cost savings and cost avoidance because of the preventative and health promotion aspects of the work that we do. As a former health promotion nurse too, that was always a challenge. And how do you quantify when you've actually prevented something, right? And so, and we continue to measure even safety in harm versus, right? And so some of that measurement also needs to change and reflect the currency of care and the currency of nursing.
Great, thank you. Great question. I don't see any other hands up, so maybe we'll move now to just in our informal part of the meeting. But Lianne, thank you so much for sharing your story. Lots of great insights shared with the group as well. Leanne, if you want to, can you put your email into
I'm
the
just
chat?
doing that now. You must have read my mind.
Okay, great. Good.
Hopefully I can spell it right, though. I have to put my glasses back on.
All right, good. So this is now opened up for anyone who'd like to introduce themselves. If you're new to our Essential meetups, or if you have any questions you want to ask or any experiences you want to share, it's just really informal at this point now. Oh, I got a hand up, June. Go
Hi,
ahead.
everybody. I'm new to the group. Very excited to be here. I was actually introduced to this organization and invited to join by Dr. Jeffs. This is a bit of a full circle for her. And just as somebody who benefited tremendously in my career from having worked with Dr. Jeffs and getting introduced to true frontline clinical nursing research, anything that she says here, I can tell you has tremendous credibility and value. It's led me to a master's programming and being engaged in clinical research myself and even entrepreneurship. I'm sure she wouldn't say that that's a line that she drew for me. However, it's definitely been something that inspired me the whole way along. My practice is, I was an emergency department nurse. I started actually at St. Michael's. That's where I met Dr. Jeffs originally. That was nearly 20 years ago now, if you can believe that. And but I'm based back home now in St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada. But I'm currently in Japan, so I apologize for joining late. That the extra half hour really threw me off there. Maybe 11 and a half hours, but and I've moved into entrepreneurship, as I say. I have a company called Catalyst Health Solutions, and we do direct nursing and medical support services, very much engaged in questioning the status quo and how do we do things better. And it couldn't be more timely now. And I just wanted to say hello briefly. So thanks for everything, Dr. Jeffs, for sure. Thank you. And I'm really
June, Lianne. Yeah, this is Lianne. This is Lianne.
Okay. I never know.
Oh, God. Please, yeah.
But thank you very much. I'm excited to be here, guys.
Well, thanks for joining us, June. And we have another colleague over in Japan. Are you at what event are you at over there?
I'm at the Atlantic Asian Pacific Foundation Canadian Women in Healthcare Trade Mission right now.
Okay, so I don't know. Do you know Charlene Brophy? She's from
Yes.
Well, from FOMED.
Yes.
So she's over there now, I believe.
Charlene is my Newfoundland mentor, where Lianne is my Toronto mentor.
Right. Well, Charlene and FOMED just recently joined SE Health as our telehealth arm, which has just been fantastic to work with that team as well.
Yeah, she's another Lianne in my life.
Yeah, good. Excellent. Small world. All right. Anybody else would like to share?
Is Alexandra.
Alexandra. Oh, there we are. Yep. The hand, everything keeps jumping around on me. I think somebody had their hand up. Alexandra, did you have your hand up?
That was me. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Alex. I'm a recent graduate of the Master's in Nursing Community Public Health program at University of Maryland, Baltimore. And I was just wondering if you guys had any recommendations for a new grad. I am interested in community public health and innovations that extend beyond the hospital setting. My particular expertise is in pediatric medicine, but I have just been a product of the pipeline of acute care. And I really think that the interventions need to be geared toward the community for really sustainable solutions. So if anyone had any kind of tips or comments for that, I am open to hearing them.
Well, I could probably comment. I spent 35 years in home and community care. And, you know, what's kept me here is the endless opportunities. You're right down, you know, at a system level, you know, but at a community level, but even most importantly, in the home. and working with our nurses. We call them the MacGyvers in the home, because we just don't have access to all the equipment you get in hospitals or in clinics. So you're really jerry-rigging a whole bunch of stuff. But we are also seeing, and you're probably hearing the same wherever you are, that we need to start pushing more care to the home because of the stresses that are currently on the health system, but most importantly, because that's where people want to receive their care, everyone in the comforts of their home. So anytime, Alexandra, I'd be happy to connect with you and talk a little bit more about what we're doing in home care in the innovation space.
Thank you, Mary Lou. I'll reach out to you.
Great, good. And Jacqueline, you have your hand up.
I do. Great to see everyone. Excuse me, met a lot of you up at the Think convention, which was just a great opportunity to meet all of you and hear your ideas. Mary Lou, I just wanted to ask you a question talking about home care. And any observations you have related to health confidence and health literacy, especially how it impacts patients in the home setting, and that goal or that drive to better self-management.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question, and there's so many other variables around that. Those are two, the health confidence and literacy, but language can be a significant barrier, although we've got much greater access to translators now, virtual translators. So we're really breaking down that barrier of going into someone's home and not being able to speak their language. But I think if I'm answering this correctly, from the people who are providing services in patients' homes, a big part of the orientation is it's not like providing care in a hospital. It's really patient driven. So it's more what matters to me versus what's the matter with me. And that in itself, I think, then breaks down some of those health literacy or issues, or because it's driven by the patient. What's most important? What are the 3 most important things I can do for you today? And that's what we'll work on. Does that help to answer the question?
No, yes, it does. Especially looking at the literacy piece, there's a lot being written and discussed that, somebody can have higher education, they can be master's educated, but yet they have a very low health literacy, and how those that lack of being able to assimilate the information that they're provided by their healthcare team into their own life has a dramatic impact on their outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think it's so important that we drive from the patient, patient-centered care. And because if they're telling you what matters to them, then that just triggers you to address that in a way that is meaningful to them, versus telling them about what's the matter with them, which I think then raises that barrier of health literacy, because it's very clinically focused versus person-centered, I would say. Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I'm glad you were able to join us at the Think conference. We're still kind of floating on clouds around that one. Everyone had such a great time. Really enjoyed it. Okay, just looking at the time, we've got a couple more minutes. Any other comments? But did anyone else attend who's online today? Was anyone else at the Think? See some familiar faces and names. Yeah, great, good. Rebecca and I are going to publish a paper on that whole experience and the importance or the value that came out of just bringing nurses back together. The energy and passion and excitement in that room for 2 days was really so refreshing after being kind of on lockdown for a couple of years. Susan?
Oh, hi. I have a bad voice today because I've developed a cough, and
Oh,
one of those respiratory things. Anyways, I was just going to say that, yes, I did. I came to that event. I only came for the one day, but it was very energizing. And I came back and I've been trying to recruit people to come and join the group, and joined one of the research committee meeting earlier this week. And yeah, I just think I was very inspired by a number of people at that particular day, and looking to connect with people for research and or education and innovation related to those two things. So thank
yeah,
you.
great. Well, great comment, because this is a great place to network with other nurses who are doing or have the same passion that you have, whether that be in research, innovation, entrepreneurship, a combination of them. This is where you can tap onto each other and gain some insights from their experience.
Yeah, and I credit Lianne too for encouraging me to come that day, because I was texting her saying, oh, I was going to come. Should I come? She goes, yes, come on. So I came.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you for joining us. And we're planning another one for 2023 and a few other events. Liam, do you want to share anything from as being our incoming president of SONCIEL?
Yeah, I think we do have some exciting news. I think all of us have experienced the fact that if your leadership is not on board or understands innovation, they can't help you. You can't progress to the next level, or if you go to them with an idea, it really doesn't go anywhere. So we reached out to the AONL, which is the American Organization of Nurse Leaders, and we pitched to them that we would love to do a design thinking workshop for the leaders, so they can, they can try to solve some of their problems through the innovation methodology. And they were very excited about that. So we're hoping to make some traction on that end, at least for leadership, so it doesn't always feel like it's an uphill battle for frontline staff.
Yeah, it's great. Great, good.
Can I say something?
Mhm.
So on that note, if an organization wants to reach out to SONCIEL to do design thinking, who should they reach out to? Because I am selling SONCIEL to ASPAN, American Society for Peri-Anesthesia Nursing.
Yeah. Mhm.
I am part of they just started innovation strategic team, and I'm pushing SONCIEL out there, and I'm trying to see if we can do something design thinking workshop with that society to kind of get SONCIEL out there, and then the nursing innovation.
Yeah, Gifty, we would love to do any design courses for you, workshops. Just reach out to Nico.
Okay.
Have you met Nico?
Yes.
Yeah, or myself or Mary Lou, or, we'd be thrilled to do that.
No problem.
And we
Thank
have we can, the good news is we can modify it for the type of specialty you want to do. And then we can work with you. So for example, we can have them, try to solve a problem that they come up with, or, something that you all might want to solve. And then we put it out to the group. So it could be a reverse pitch and say, here's the problems, we'd like you to solve it. So there's several ways to do it, but we'd be thrilled to help you.
Thank you. Because SONCIEL
By the
is
way,
doing an
Gifty,
awesome job.
Congratulations, you're doing some amazing stuff.
We're trying. It started with SONCIEL, to tell you, and I'm going to be taking it to the continental Africa nest.
Yes.
Love it.
Excellent. Global impact. That's wonderful.
Amen.
Excellent. Good. Okay, I think we're down to the last couple of minutes. So I want to thank Lianne for sharing her story with us. That was wonderful. I also want to thank BBRON for their ongoing support of our meetups. It's nice to have all of you. Thank you for joining us just a couple of weeks before Christmas, spending your December evening. And we'll be back in January with, I think the topic in January is going to focus on sort of the different career paths that nurses take. And we'll have a small panel of presenters. So stay tuned for that. You'll hear more as Nico keeps you all informed. Nico, any last words?
Thank you all for joining us this evening. We really appreciate it, and happy, healthy, and safe holidays.
Yes.
And thank you, Lianne.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Good night.
Good night,
Thanks, everyone.
everybody.
Bye.